go inside for the dancing and stuff. And all of a sudden we saw paramedics from MADA and whatever running by, like mid-CPR on kids. And then one after the other started coming out in ambulances.
150 people are reported to be injured. What caused the stampede not clear yet. The annual festival of Lag BaOmer traditionally takes place 33 days after the start of Passover. President Biden took his pitch to spend $4 trillion on infrastructure and the government's social safety net to Georgia on Thursday, telling a drive-in rally in Duluth, Georgia.
It's a once-in-a-generation investment in America. It's the biggest jobs plan in this country since World War II. And here's what it does. It creates jobs rebuilding and modernizing our roads, our highways, our bridges, our ports, our airports.
Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell says the president's plan is much too expensive, telling Fox's The Story with Martha McCallum.
We're coming out of this pandemic. Growth is picking up dramatically.
Yeah.
Vaccines are getting in arms. These proposals are wildly out of proportion to what the country needs at this particular juncture.
Republicans are defending Senator Tim Scott against attacks from the left for saying in the GOP response to the president's speech the other night that America is not a racist country.
There are few things that enrage the left more than minorities that don't sit down and shut up and obey.
Texas Senator Ted Cruz, Twitter ultimately blocking the phrase Uncle Tim from its platform because it says it didn't promote a healthy conversation. An SUV has slammed into a New York City restaurant's outdoor dining area, killing one and injuring several people. America is listening to Fox News.
Do you dread waiting in those long, inconvenient lines? That's why you won't find them at Bank Pacific. Go back to our pre-COVID Monday to Saturday hours with all of our branches open. You know, that where others put branches, we place roots thing. And if you don't want to come to the bank, we have My Cloud Banking through which you can go to the bank on any of your devices, including through our new cool mobile banking platform with a remote capture so you can deposit checks from anywhere. Offline, online, no line. Bank Pacific. Where others put branches, we place roots and we're rooting for you. Member FDIC.
When's the last time you looked at your homeowner's insurance?
A homeowner's policy protects much more than just your house. It also protects you against claims from someone being hurt on your property. If a visitor is injured at your place, how much are you covered for? The smart thing to do is get the answer today.
That's the Insurance Extra Point. Get out there and make something good happen today by calling Guahan Insurance Services at 475-1162 or visit us at the Camacho Landmark Center in Tamuning.
With vaccination rates rising, the average daily number of COVID cases in the U.S. is declining.
The U.S. is averaging about 52,000 new COVID cases a day. That's down 26% from 2 weeks ago, which puts us back to where we were in the fall before the winter surge. Hospitalizations and deaths have also seen dramatic declines. Even hard-hit states like Michigan and New York are seeing significant improvement. And the CDC is now reflecting that by relaxing mask guidelines outdoors and acknowledging solid progress. But despite 43% of Americans having at least one dose of vaccine, President Biden is still imploring the public to remain on guard.
Fox's Trace Gallagher. New York's Mayor de Blasio setting a target date of July 1st to reopen almost everything in New York City. Governor Cuomo calls that premature. President Biden insisting he was not briefed in advance on federal agents raiding the home of former Trump attorney Rudy Giuliani.
But Attorney General Merrick Garland and FBI Director Christopher Wray were well aware before agents moved in, taking cell phones, computers, and other electronics. Fox News has learned neither ordered the raid, but were given a courtesy heads up before it happened. Standard practice. A law enforcement source says discussions of a Giuliani raid began months ago during Bill Barr's tenure as Attorney General, though officials declined to move forward. But when Joe Biden became the 46th president, the investigation picked up steam and quickly.
Fox's David Spunt, Giuliani telling Fox's Tucker Carlson tonight the warrant was illegal.
The only way you can get a search warrant is if you can show that there's some evidence that the person is going to destroy the evidence or is going to run away with the evidence. Well, I've had it for 2 years and I haven't destroyed it.
Giuliani has been under investigation for his lobbying efforts in Ukraine. I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Need to finish the job or start one the right way? Get the right stuff at East West Rental Center. You can switch to easy mode using industrial strength equipment. With years of experience helping builders, East West Rental gives you exactly what you need. Tools for landscaping, concrete, lifts, trucks, tables, tents, chairs, water blasters, excavators, forklifts, air compressors, and more. Call East West Rental Center at 646-1463 or visit them in Upper Tumont. Open Monday to Saturday from 7 to 5, Sundays 8 to 5.
Hafaday, this is Congressman Nicholas. If you are a small business, you may be interested in a federal program called the State Small Business Credit Initiative. This program can provide federal funds to match equity investments into your company or help you get lower interest rates at local banks. To find out more on how this program can help your small business, please contact your Guam Congressional Office at 475-6453 or at michael.sanicolas@mail.house.gov.
This ad was paid for with official funds from the Office of Congressman Michael F.Q. San Nicolas.
Listen to The Point. Any speaker, anytime. Check us out on your FM radio at 93.3, 104.3 HD3, thepoint.gu, Facebook Live, YouTube Live, and tune in. And announcing radio.com. Download the app and hear The Point. Get the latest news, sports, entertainment, and more.
On demand.
Your phone is digital. Your life is digital. And we are too. 93.3, The Point.
Everyone has a busy schedule these days, and sometimes we forget to schedule our routine dental checkup and cleaning. Don't neglect your dental health. Schedule one today with Dr. Robert Yang and his Smile Team, conveniently located at the East West Business Center on Marine Drive, Upper Tumont. Call us today at 647-8702 or 3. Again, that's 647-8702 or 647-8703. We make smiles happen.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Yeah. Even tomorrow and Sunday, when I won't be here to read that respectful message onto the air, the rule remains the same. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed, at least not so long as I got anything to say about it. That's going to be for a long time. Let's go next to Zemi Ikatni. Once again, we have a news story disguised as an editorial. Space is the problem. Ensure proper instruction for all Guam DOE students. I wonder why we always have to put Guam in wherever we're talking about something, like Guam DOE students, like we're going to be writing about the students in California or where, right? A good writer is one that doesn't waste words, that you don't use together with when you could just use together. Yeah, the Guam Department of Education is trying to figure out how to accommodate the number of students that want to attend school for in-person instruction. And it's just pure news story here. 85% of the people want to go to face-to-face. With the distancing, that they can only handle 25,000 students. With our classrooms that are equipped to handle 30,000 students, and so on down the line. And because we're going to do both in-person and online, we're going to need more teachers. So he could have sent a reporter out to interview John Fernandez, and this could have been a news story. Here is the last paragraph. One of the keys is for the school system to regularly update the public on what options are available and any changes to instruction models. That will allow parents to make the best decision for their children's education. Yeah, I don't know who wrote this, but you got a marvelous grasp for the obvious. No, not even close to a blue star. No.
Nothing like ending on a platitude.
Exactly. And we go to the Post. The case of 2 GMH doctors who traveled to India and became Wuhan virus positive shows a lapse in judgment. Doctors, a lapse in judgment? It boggles the mind. And they went to Indiana. You know, they could have, they went to India. They could have just gone to Indiana. It would have been about the same thing, right, Jose?
Absolutely.
And if you want to double down on Indiana, go to Indianapolis, Indiana. And the editorial starts like this. We hear this all the time. We should still wear our masks when in crowded places, so we're told. And we comply. And we're often told we should not let our guard down, even if we've been vaccinated against Wuhan virus. So we still wear masks and we still keep a safe distance from others. And in my case, people keep a safe distance from me. You know, being too closely associated with tall tales, I'm told if that information arrives at the front office, a person could be canceled. Yeah. Well, that's better than losing your head, right? And the government of Guam has been adamant about placing arriving travelers in a hotel turned government quarantine facility for up to 2 weeks when they arrive on Guam, even when the Wuhan virus infection rate locally has gone down significantly. But alas, there are exceptions to quarantining and to testing upon arrivals to get out of quarantine early. 2 people in particularly who were not required to follow the full 14-day quarantine are now confirmed to be positive for Wuhan virus after they returned from a trip to India. Now, why would anybody want to go to India right now? Kind of narrows down the list of suspects, doesn't it? 2 travelers are Guam Memorial Hospital doctors who arrived on Guam without immediately getting Wuhan virus testing clearance or being quarantined until it was safe. A nation of more than 1.3 billion, India is in the grip of a devastating surge with more than 360,000 new cases the previous day. Another global record, and 3,293 deaths, raising its death toll past 200,000. The WAPO reported Thursday Indian hospitals and crematoriums have been overwhelmed. And the 2 doctors returned to their duties at GMH prior to finding out they were infected with the virus that causes Wuhan virus. Wow. GMH Administrator Lillian Paris-Posadas said the 2 doctors were fully vaccinated, and because the doctors had polymerase chain reaction, or PCR testing, conducted prior to leaving India, which showed negative results, they were cleared to return to their duties at GMH. It seems right to me. A week after the doctor's arrival, Paris-Posada said, the 2 began showing symptoms of Wuhan virus infection. The doctors returned to work, followed protocol, she said, but it is clear a U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention advisory on travel to India was not followed. Now, If they'd been listening to Tall Tales when we play Back Home Again in Indiana for bumper music, they would have known, don't go to India. Don't go to Indonesia. Indiana is exotic enough. That would have been the place to go. Because of the current situation in India, even fully vaccinated travelers may be at risk for getting and spreading Wuhan variants and should avoid all travel to India, the CDC stated. And because the two doctors went to India anyway, despite the CDC advisory, they should have been required to quarantine for the full 14 days. That would have been part of not letting down our guard. Even if they tested negative for Wuhan virus in India, there are no direct flights from India to Guam. So they would have had to transit through at least one other country. The least GovGuam health officials could have required was multiple testing on Guam over a span of days and requiring them to quarantine until it was safe and clear that they did not contract Wuhan virus. Someone at the top of vetting two doctors returned to work at our government hospital should have seen all kinds of red flags flapping. The situation raises a host of questions. If the CDC advisory is not enough to heed by no less than doctors and hospital management, what is? If the doctors had been working at GMH prior to the confirmation they were infected with the virus that causes Wuhan, and were already showing symptoms prior to stopping their work at GMH, how many patients and employees at GMH were exposed to these two doctors? Given they were on Guam for a week prior to being sent to isolation, how many people did they expose to the risk of infection? Paris Posada said she has not heard from public health if they were doing any Wuhan virus infection, if any Wuhan virus inspections discovered from the contract tracing involving the two doctors. She said she would be following up with public health. It's important to apply Wuhan virus safety rules to everyone, doctors included, especially if they came from a Wuhan virus hotspot. It was a lapse in judgment on multiple levels that brought Wuhan virus from India to Guam. The full effect of these two doctors' Wuhan virus infections have yet to play out. Guam cannot risk another wave of Wuhan virus cases. Our lives and our economy cannot be disrupted again. Well, I have a question here. So the doctors deliberately disobeyed the kind of guidance that one would think they would be required to follow by the Hippocratic Oath. First of all, do no harm, including to yourself. So if you know it's dangerous to go to India, you shouldn't go, because not doing any harm to yourself means that, by derivation, you can continue to practice and not do harm to other folks, which, of course, you did. So what discipline will the doctors face? Now, of course, the doctors haven't committed one of the really, really serious violations that the Board of Medical Examiners take cognizance of. You know, they haven't dissed a female. So they may be okay. They may not have to go before that board, you know. And they haven't, as David Lebowski said, they haven't failed to show up as a young boy was dying overnight for lack of medical care. They haven't done that. So maybe they'll get off okay. Then the second question is, did anyone at the hospital know that these two doctors had gone to India? Because if anyone knew that the two doctors had gone to India, they were duty-bound to be Karens. When those two doctors showed up at the hospital, they should have gone immediately to Lillian Paris Posadas and said, those people cannot be in this building until they've quarantined for 14 days and gone through the regimen, because they've been to India. So if you had done that, if you had said that, Guam Daily Post, guess what? But you didn't say it. So no Blue Star today. You know, you did most of it. You got into a really important issue. You developed the facts. You laid out the issue. You had a theory upon which to proceed. But when you got right up to the time when you were supposed to tell us the punchline, you went to Indiana. So no Blue Star for the Post today. Okay, well, let me go to my 10 politically correct but factually false words for today. And I also, during this portion of the program, I want to talk a little bit about virtue signaling, noting that we haven't seen Dr. Shea and Mariana Leon Guerrero do their usual virtual signaling since the last time they did it and the whole country caught on fire, not because of them. Okay, 10 politically correct but factually false words and phrases to stop using immediately. And this is from George Orwell, a quote, "The worst thing one can do with words is to surrender them." Orwell protested not just sloppy use of language, but intentional misuse of language for political purposes. Political language is designed to make lies sound truthful and murder respectable, he said. Thus, political language has to consist largely of euphemism, question-begging, and sheer cloudy vagueness. And I'm going to get into that. So the first phrase that I urge you not to use mainstream media. And here's the reason why. The public communications cartel, headed by the New York Times, the Washington Post, CNN, CBS, and PMSNBC, do not represent mainstream Americans. They represent the Democrat Party and the left wing thereof at that. Don't use gender when you mean sex. Words have gender. People are one sex or the other. And the one you start out with is the one you're going to finish up with, no matter how badly you would like to be the other one. Don't use the phrase sex reassignment surgery. Sex is not assigned at birth or ever. It's not assigned. It cannot be reassigned. It's just like your place in line at the Chamorro Land Trust Commission. Even Jack Haddock can't assign it, much as he probably would like to. Surgical procedures that remove or conceal the outward appearance of a woman or man's reproductive organs are most accurately described as genital mutilation or amputation. Don't say democracy when you mean republic. I went into that yesterday. Here's number 5 on the list. Don't talk in terms of abortion doctors and abortion clinics. Doctors protect life. They don't willfully take it. The Hippocratic Oath, written by the ancient Greek physician Hippocrates and long respected as a noble description of a doctor's vocation, includes a commitment to, quote, not give to a woman an abortive remedy. Doctors are also obligated to, as far as is in their power, to do no harm. Similarly, clinics are medical facilities where people receive help and care. We do not call the room in which a prisoner on death row is executed a clinic. and neither should we use a term to describe the place where preborn babies are killed and dismembered. Call abortionists and abortion facilities what they are. Don't call them abortion clinics. Sound advice. Now, I want to talk a little bit about virtue signaling because it ties right into this same theme. It's a little bit long, but it's pretty interesting. Last September, a professor of African Studies at George Washington University, Jessica Krug, admitted to faking African and Latina heritage for her entire life. Yeah. She was apparently about to be outed as a race faker and decided to get ahead of the news by admitting she was a, quote, culture leech. We're back to the medical profession again.
She'll run for Senate from New Hampshire.
According to friends, Krug was militant and aggressive in her stances against systemic racism, going so far as to pick fights in public with other white women and expect her black friends to help her. Clearly, Krug thought identifying as black allowed her to claim the moral high ground from the white devils and lend her more expertise and street cred in her career as a professor and author of African Studies. Rachel Dolezal, famously outed after years of pretending to be black, also benefited from her faked identity. She was the head of an NAACP chapter. If you forgot what NAACP means, National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. Well, Rachel was the president of the NAACP for Spokane. Yeah, until she got caught. And who could forget Elizabeth Warren, who was listed as a minority professor at Harvard for years because she thought her high cheekbones made her a Native American. She was later hilariously trolled by Trump, who convinced her to get a DNA test, which she actually bragged about, saying it confirmed that she is at most 1/64th Native American, which is less than the average white American. The average white American has more Native American DNA than that. This really isn't a hard phenomenon to figure out. The more you give certain groups in society special advantages and privileges, from the moral high ground to jobs and salaries, the more this will bring the worst type of people out of the woodwork to take advantage. In the context of two recent studies, it makes perfect sense. Here, the science confirms what we intuitively know, that bad people take advantage of other people's good intentions to gain power. You've probably heard of virtue signaling, when someone tries to show how morally superior they are because of some cause they claim to care about, like going down to Skinner Plaza wearing a white coat and kneeling and saying, "Black Lives Matter." Classic example. For example, the Instagram influencers caught staging pictures which showed them helping to clean up a neighborhood after a riot, or a company that tweets out support for gay rights during Pride Month. They are signaling that they are virtuous and reaping the social and material rewards of being part of the woke crowd. Okay, now the rest of this article talks about they are signaling they are virtue as it were, but the new research indicates that these social justice warriors might not be so well intentioned. The Journal of Personality and Social Psychology recently published a paper which analyzed the results of a number of studies on victimhood and virtue signaling. The paper is called Signaling Virtuous Victimhood as Indicators of Dark Triad Personalities. The dark triad personalities are narcissism, psychopathy, and Machiavellianism. I would say especially Machiavellianism. So I'm not going to go through this psychological workup, but winding up here, the author says that areas of the United States that are measured to be most psychopathic are those in the Northeast and other similarly populated regions. Do I look surprised? The tests, the least psychopathic, are predominantly rural. The District of Columbia is measured to be far more psychopathic than any individual state in the country, a fact that can be readily explained either by its high population density or by the type of person who may be drawn there. And then the author confesses. He says, hailing originally from Massachusetts, I can attest to the highest corresponding trait being temperamental and uninhibited. Where do you think the term masshole came from? I got to remember that the next time. What's his name from Boston calls?
Mr. Paul.
The next time Paul calls from Boston, I got to remember that word.
I thought he was going to be in town this weekend.
Yeah, gosh, I was hoping I could hang out with him this weekend, you know.
Looking for, I'm sure you were.
I got nothing else to do, you know.
Okay. I'll point his way up to Geo.
Just sit around and watch old episodes of Tall Tales. And then he goes on to say, if you aren't a psychopath when you enter Massachusetts, you soon will become one after the traffic alone. And he says, and I wonder if just being in such close proximity to people makes it necessary adaptation to care a little less about how your actions affect others. Earlier on in this article, he quotes the old Lord Acton, power corrupts, total power corrupts, or absolute power corrupts absolutely. He said, and he points out that the highest concentration of these type of people that the article refers to are in Washington. And he said, power not only corrupts, but power also attracts. And it attracts people who have these traits. They don't learn it in Washington. They have it, and that's why they go there.
It magnifies it.
It's a magnet for them. Yeah, he said, and I wonder if just being in such close proximity to such people makes it a necessary adaptation to care a little less about how your actions affect others. The solution is to not give a single inch to these virtue-signaling psychopaths. Don't engage them. Don't fall into their traps. Don't denounce your whiteness or apologize for being straight, Christian, rich, privileged, or whatever. That's a race to the bottom, and the best thing we can do is either ignore them or relentlessly make fun of them with memes. That's my job. What if you don't want to do this? What you don't want to do is go in the other direction and become the self-fulfilling prophecy by actually becoming racist. Remember, this is a small group of people trying to make everyone else self-segregate or identify with a victim group. Just keep it in mind that this narrative is being driven by elitist white liberals, some of whom will go so far as to fake being victims themselves. The other thing you can do is self-select the group you associate with and live around. And listen to Tall Tales, of course. So, an interesting take on virtue signaling, and a phrase that everyone should have in his vocabulary, right up there, virtue signaling, and its first cousin, righteousness preening. Yeah, which we also
like
saw
that
down
one.
there at Skinner Platt. It's righteousness preening. All right, let's take a short break here, and we'll come back to the card.
Hoffaday, this is Severina. Here at APL, our expertise and extensive network can help you grow your business and reach out to more global markets. As a responsible carrier, APL is also committed to a sustainable future, whether it's protecting the environment or investing our efforts in giving back to the community. Our dedicated teams in Guam, Saipan, and on U.S. mainland are here to support you. Call 588-4651 or visit www.apl.com.
All dads should own a Traeger. And this Father's Day, you can win a Traeger smoker grill for your dad and feast on flavorful wood-fire crafted meals. Cooked with a flip of a switch. Cook low and slow or high and fast with digital precision on your Traeger pellet grill. Purchase $35 or more in fuel at 76 Circle K and enter to win. Gas up today and join Circle K's Father's Day package giveaway. A Traeger smoker grill, a canopy, a cooler full of meat, and 2 cases of Bud or Bud Light are up for grabs only at Circle K. Conditions apply. Visit 76CircleKGuam.com.
We now return to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, soaring over the confusion with his superpowers of truth. Call 888-TALK. That's 888-8255.
So here we are, the beginning of our least favorite day here on Tall Tales. Jose and I got to suffer. Come 1800, we got to suffer for 70 hours. No tall tales, no tailgaters. It's tough. We somehow managed to make it through every week and come back bright-eyed and bushy-tailed on Monday. But today's the day. So my program notes, glancing at my program notes here, we still got to talk a little bit more about the Chauvin verdict. And I probably want to chat a little bit about Julian Uggan in the card. And the president writing, the governor writing to the president. And then, of course, BJ called the governor on her war claims photo op. And then the AG takes on BJ. So I'm going to get into that and give you the 411 on the AG's taking on BJ. And I'm going to rule on it. And I'm going to give you advance warning. I'm going to rule against the AG and in favor of BJ. And there's litigation over the tobacco tax, and we talked about that yesterday, and I've got some background that goes back to the Calvo administration on the matter of tobacco tax. Michael Bavacqua, who writes a column for the Daily News every week that is really predictable. If you want to know about identity politics, victimology, and the whole thing, make sure you read Michael's column. Once in a while, he goes off the rails and writes about something that is not about victimology, but not too much. And today, he does the same thing that Johnny Sablon that he did to my really good friend, the late Alf Scambelluri, may he rest in peace. And Bavacqua used Scambelluri as a perch to write his colonizer column. And he's doing the same thing to Johnny Sablon, which is a real pity because Johnny Sablon comes as close to being a real live national treasure as anybody on the island, and he should be admired and respected, not used as a perch for your identity politics approach, Michael Bavacqua. So that's how the card shapes up today. Starting out with Western sales versus Rev tax. I had this on the card yesterday, and I read from the plea, as were the alternative writ of mandate that issued from the Superior Court against Daphne Shimizu as the director of Rev tax. And Troy, as usual, beat everybody to the punch on this one. The Daily News picked it up today. The Daily News does a pretty good job of framing the issue, so I'll give Steve Limtiaco, who's a pretty good reporter, a little time here. Here's what Steve says. A local wholesale company sued Rev Tax Director Daphne Shimizu, asking the Superior Court to require Shimizu to follow the law and implement a tax stamp on cigarettes sold here. Well, not really. You know that from my Law and Order part of the last program, right? Shimizu has until 2 p.m. May 19 to implement the law. Otherwise, she's required to tell the court why she hasn't done so. And once again, for clarity, explaining that's the way writ practice works. You know, almost never does the person to whom the writ is served do what the writ commands, if it's an alternative writ. The procedural challenge, it occurs at the show cause hearing, where the person, the respondent comes forward and says, this writ should not be granted because blah, 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 blah. And quite often the court agrees with the respondent and issues a ruling. Petition for writ of mandamus denied. Whenever we're talking about courts and mandamus and stuff, you want to be ready to deny those motions.
Denied.
That's better, yeah. So that's the way writ practice works. But the newspapers always get it wrong. Court orders director to comply with law. Whoa. Not so. Okay, going on with the story. Western Sales Trading Company, who I think sells cigarettes, told the court the failure to issue stamps to monitor and enforce tax collections puts the company at a price disadvantage if the island's other tobacco wholesalers aren't collecting and paying taxes. I'm going to stop here again, and let's turn on the Law and Order notebooks. Generally, a petition for writ of mandate lies to compel the court to do something for the petitioner. You know, I'm entitled to a concealed carry license. I have filled out all the papers. I'm qualified for the license. The chief won't issue it. Command the chief to issue a concealed. That's the way it usually goes. Now, this one is one step removed because the petitioner here is saying that if you don't enforce the law against other people, that's how I'm hurt. That's a little bit iffy for a writ of mandate because, well, let me go farther into this. He's saying that he's at a competitive disadvantage. I would think that the Western Sales would want to come into court then and show prices on dealers that where stores sell cigarettes for less than the stores that buy wholesale from Western Sales. Now, if Western Sales, for instance, has Old Golds, I wonder if they still make Old Golds.
I've never heard of it.
Old Golds and Camels used to be the strongest cigarettes out there.
I heard of Camels. Cool, I also remember those.
Yeah. And the conventional wisdom was if you had a cold, you should smoke Cools because they were mentholated. Make your cold get better fast, right? Yeah, so if Western Sales sells Old Golds and another store that buys its cigarettes from somebody else sells Camels, and Camels are selling for less than Old Golds, yeah, maybe. But I got a feeling that isn't the case. It's just a feeling, just a supposition. Okay, back into the article here. The current sin tax on tobacco is $4 per pack of cigarettes. $4 a pack.
Wow.
You know, back in my smoking days, you could buy 2 cartons for $4. Those were the days. No wonder I smoked. It was too expensive not to in those days, right? So it's $4 a pack, 58 cents per standard cigar, and $53 per pound for all other tobacco products. Now, this marijuana industry is looking better all the time, isn't it? The tax is to be paid by wholesalers or distributors. A 2017 law written by Senator Mike San Nicolas requires wholesalers to purchase tax stamps from RevTax and attach them to the bottom of every cigarette package as proof that taxes have been paid. Yeah, it sure works for the post office, doesn't it? Try sending a letter without a stamp on it.
Can we use a cigarette stamp?
Yeah. The law states that the government has relied on voluntary compliance to collect tobacco taxes, and that a good accountability mechanism will level the playing field. Well, I guess that's what Western systems may advance to the court and allow companies to comply with the law to be competitive. The cigarette stamp program never was implemented. Western Sales, in its petition for writ of mandate, required RevTax to implement a stamp program within 90 days or to, I don't have the rest of the article here again. Okay, so that's what's going on. One cigarette company is suing the director of RevTax because RevTax has not implemented a 2017 law that seems to be a real common sense law. Put together, have tax stamps printed, sell them to tobacco wholesalers, and any store that has cigarette packs that don't have that tax stamp attached to the bottom are breaking the law. And as I mentioned yesterday, it's that way in all the states and in an awful lot of foreign countries. Unfortunately, I used to be a smoker, so I know these things. But you know why I quit smoking, Jose?
Why did you quit smoking, Bob?
I wanted to see what it'd be like to be perfect.
You're almost there.
Well, I thought that's all I needed to do. My one fault. All right. So I've got an article that ran in the Daily News
Just real quick, you haven't taken a knee in a white coat yet.
Yeah, that's true. I'm not doing enough virtue signaling. That's it. So I've got a 2-year-old copy of something that ran in the Daily News here. Speaker Benjamin Cruz on Thursday asked the United States Attorney's Office and the FBI to investigate potential tax evasion by mid-pack distributors amounting to $14.5 million over 3 years. Cruz, a candidate for public auditor and a former Chief Justice, said mid-pack may control about 50% of the cigarette market on Guam. It distributes Philip Morris brand cigarettes on island. The speaker, in a letter to federal authorities, said, assuming other cigarette distributors are paying their portion of the cigarette tax, there is a potential underreporting as much as 30% of the total cigarettes taxes due, in the range of $750,000 to $1 million per month, possibly attributed to mid-pack alone. The admitted failure of mid-pack to report and pay over $14.5 million in local cigarette taxes in the past 3 years requires federal agencies to investigate the possibility of tax evasion and diversion of cigarette activities, cigarette smuggling, in violation of federal and Guam laws spanning beyond the reported 3-year period. Cruz said in a July 26 letter to acting U.S. Attorney Sean Anderson. John Calvo, the president and general manager of MidPAC, on Thursday night said accusations by the Speaker and Senator Mike San Nicolas that MidPAC has been engaged in cigarette smuggling and tax evasion are baseless. The claim that MidPAC diverts or smuggles shipments of cigarettes to or out of Guam is entirely false. Calvo said in a statement, on the contrary, as a licensed distributor, MidPAC has sought to prevent the unlawful importation and sale of cigarettes by unlicensed persons on Guam without payment of any taxes. Calvo said the inadvertent underpayment of excise taxes was unfortunate, but did not involve any diversion of product from our bonded warehouse facility, which is under the oversight of the Department of Rev Tax. Calvo said MidPAC last year discovered issues with its reconciliation of tobacco taxes and unilaterally brought the matter to the Department of Rev Tax. So they had a problem, they discovered it, they took it to Rev Tax. As a result of MidPAC's voluntary notice, Rev Tax reviewed the situation, assessed MidPAC additional taxes, and then agreed to an installment plan involving substantial payments as well as monthly payments in addition to MidPAC's regularly monthly excise tax payments, Calvo said. MidPAC pays millions of dollars in much-needed tax revenues to the governor in addition to employing hundreds of employees, Calvo stated. I understand that we are in the height of a political season, but the mean-spirited and baseless assault is really unmerited. MidPAC is meeting all its tax obligations, accounting for every cigarette it imports and distributes, and will continue to be a significant contributor to our island economy. MidPAC is a local company which has been doing business on Guam for over 70 years, Calvo said. Guam requires all imported cigarettes be placed in a bonded warehouse until the cigarette tax is paid before they can be sold by a wholesaler such as MidPAC. Cruz said one obvious way to avoid payment of taxes is to divert all or portion of the shipment of cigarettes to avoid reporting and payment of cigarette taxes. Don't put them in the warehouse. The speaker said how the alleged diversion of cigarettes is being accomplished needs to be investigated by the federal law enforcement agencies. Cruz earlier this month asked the Attorney General to review the tax liens the Department of Rev Tax issued against MidPAC, citing legal and ethical conflicts that may arise because MidPAC is owned by Governor Eddie Calvo's family. Now, here's where the news story goes wrong. No, it's Cruz. I'm sorry, this is a quote from Cruz. The governor is Guam's tax commissioner. The governor is not Guam's tax commissioner. People get this wrong all the time. If you go to the Organic Act, you'll see that the governor has a peculiar role with respect to the territorial income tax only. And the Organic Act provision that deals with the territorial income tax makes what ordinarily is the Internal Revenue Code Guam law. And the Guam law is to be administered by the governor of Guam in the same manner as though he were the Secretary of the Treasury of the United States of America. That's what the governor does. With respect to local taxes, the governor is not anywhere in the code. The governor appoints the Director of Revenue and Taxation, and I wouldn't be surprised if he whispers into the ear of the Director of Revenue and Taxation, but he's not. Repeat, he's not the tax commissioner. So Cruz's quote is wrong. Cruz is quoted as saying, as tax commissioner, the governor has broad and nearly unchecked power to settle tax disputes, Cruz said. Well, the Director of Rev Tax does. Let's take a short break here, and we'll come back to the tax commissioner.
Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro in Tumon is back with all your mezcla favorites, like oxtail kadu, Kahlua pig and cabbage, and Chef Peter's style black stew frittata. Mezcla is ready to welcome back everyone with great service in a safe and friendly environment. Come on down and visit Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro in Tumon, located on the first floor lobby of the Grand Plaza Hotel. Open for lunch from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. and for dinner from 5:30 p.m. to 9 p.m. Call 969-2652 for reservations. Mezcla, a true taste of Guam.
Do you dread waiting in those long, inconvenient lines? That's why you won't find them at Bank Pacific. We're back to our pre-COVID Monday to Saturday hours with all of our branches open. You know, that where others put branches, we place roots thing. And if you don't want to come to the bank, we have MyCloud Banking through which you can go to the bank on any of your devices, including through our new cool mobile banking platform with remote capture so you can deposit checks from anywhere. Offline, online, no line. Bank Pacific. Where others put branches, we place roots and rooting for you. Member FDIC.
Okay, so here we are back with the tax commissioner. So the governor is not the tax commissioner. The governor is, for purposes of income tax, analogous to the Secretary of Treasury of the United States. And he does have almost unfettered authority to settle claims arising under the income tax law. And you probably remember when the Attorney General had a tax case against Dennis Rodriguez the Elder, and the governor took the case away from the Attorney General, settled it himself for $40,000. It was I don't remember how much it was, but it was over $1 million. So maybe this is where BJ got mixed up, or maybe BJ's just exaggerating for effect. But that is the way the law is written, that the governor can delegate his authority. He delegates his authority to the director of Rev Tax. Some of it gets delegated to the Attorney General, etc. But the governor is the Secretary of the Treasury, and all cases arising under the Guam Territorial Income Tax must be tried in the district court, not the Superior Court. The district court being what you're going to call a federal court. So that's a peculiarity with our tax situation. But the governor doesn't have statutory broad authority to settle tobacco tax claims. The governor can whisper into the ear of the director of Rev Tax, and where it goes from there is up to your speculation of how the director undertakes their duties. Yeah. Okay, one more thing in this article here. San Nicolas calls it possible tobacco smuggling. San Nicolas last week sent a request to the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, asking it to investigate what he called possible tobacco smuggling by Midpack. The request was prompted by a July 16 legislative hearing during which Rev Tax officials confirmed that $14.7 million in tax liens against Midpack are related to unpaid tobacco taxes. So that was quite a kerfuffle when it came up. And it's what prompted San Nicolas to come forward with this tobacco tax legislation. Why the Leon Guerrero administration is not implementing that statute is a really interesting question, because a little more historical background here. We have a healthy futures fund, which funds, guess what? Various things dealing with health. And the Healthy Futures Fund is funded by sin taxes like the tobacco tax. Guess who the author of the legislation that created the Healthy Futures Fund and its primary advocate was back in the 28th Guam legislature?
Are his initials B and J?
Nope.
What?
Nope. Their initials are LLG.
Oh, wow.
So her Healthy Futures Fund is funded by tobacco tax, so you'd think that she would be out there, doing everything that she can to collect the tobacco taxes. And given everything that's happened here, this tobacco tax thing seems to be eminently good sense. And why it would require another tobacco company, another tobacco retailer or wholesaler to come along and force the government to do what it ought to just do anyhow. Governor, you got some splaining to do. So I hope that Steve Limpiaco goes and sticks a microphone in the governor's face and goes through the same story I just went through here. Why isn't your director of Rev Tax collecting the tobacco tax from those stamps? Okay, let's break for the big halftime show, and I'm going to come back to Babauta versus Hattic.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
A deadly stampede. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. In northern Israel, at least 44 people have died at a religious festival.
Medics rushed to the scene near Mount Meron, where thousands of Orthodox Jews were celebrating Lag BaOmer, the bonfire festival. Video shows injured attendees being rushed to waiting ambulances as the Israeli military sent helicopters to help evacuate the wounded. In a statement, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu called this a heavy disaster. The country will hold dozens of funerals today in accordance with Jewish tradition.
Fox's Trey Yingst reports from the Middle East Bureau what triggered that stampede isn't clear yet. President Biden taking his pitch for new federal spending to Georgia yesterday.
The Bidens held a campaign-style drive-in rally in Duluth. The president again thanked Georgians for the office he now holds and one that 2 Democrats in the Senate now have.
In November and then again in January, your vote changed the world.
He touted his plans for jobs and families, but not before having to acknowledge protesters calling for private prisons to be closed.
I agree with you. I'm working on it, man. Give me another 5 days.
The president signed an executive action in late January saying private prison contracts won't be renewed.
Fox's Gernal Scott. India's coronavirus cases climbing again, prompting the army there to open up its hospitals in a desperate bid to control a massive humanitarian crisis created by an acute shortage of beds, medicines, and oxygen. With more than 386,000 new cases, India has now reported more than 18.7 million since the pandemic began. The first shipment of therapeutics and PPE has arrived from the United States. Wall Street Thursday, the Dow up 239 points, NASDAQ added 31, the S&P 500 28 points higher to close at a new record. America is listening to Fox News.
When's the last time you looked at your homeowner's insurance?
We buy a homeowner's policy and never give it another thought until something happens. Life brings changes, and our coverage needs can change. The smart thing to do is get the answers and level up our insurance to make sure we're totally protected.
That's the Insurance Extra Point. Get out there and make something good happen today by calling Guahan Insurance Services at 475-1162 or visit us at the Camacho Landmark Center in Tamuning.
Half a day. Patsy Gogri from Security Title with a real estate tip. A power of attorney can be a useful tool when a buyer or seller cannot be present to sign documents, such as a military member deployed overseas. To mitigate its fraudulent use, your escrow officer will contact the seller to make sure they know their property is being sold. When using a power of attorney, call the professionals at Security Title. We are here to help.
The Pentagon says it is preparing for the possibility of Taliban attacks on U.S. and coalition forces during the withdrawal of U.S. forces from Afghanistan. Pentagon Press Secretary John Kirby saying they have to assume the drawdown will be opposed, explaining why Defense Secretary Austin has decided to keep an aircraft carrier in the Middle East during the pullout and to move Army Rangers and at least 4 B-52 bombers to Afghanistan as a precaution. A group of farmers suing the administration, claiming race discrimination in federal loan forgiveness.
5 farmers from Ohio, South Dakota, Wisconsin, and Minnesota have listed the Secretary of Agriculture and Administrator of the Farm Services Agency in a lawsuit, alleging that the loan forgiveness for farmers in the American Rescue Plan doesn't apply to them because they are white, that billions of dollars in government loan forgiveness are going to socially disadvantaged farmers and ranchers, including Black, American Indian, Alaskan Native, Latino, Asian, and Pacific Islanders. The farmers say this is unconstitutional. The USDA said in a statement they are reviewing the lawsuit, but plan to continue giving the aid to those they consider socially disadvantaged. Jessica Rosenthal, Fox News.
In person for the first time in 2 years, the first round of the NFL Draft is complete.
After months of waiting, Trevor Lawrence is officially heading to Duval.
With the first pick in the 2021 NFL Draft, the Jacksonville Jaguars select Trevor Lawrence, quarterback, Clemson.
Boston.
NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell there on ESPN. The Clemson quarterback going first overall to the Jacksonville Jaguars as anticipated. The top 3 picks of this year's draft, all QBs. The New York Jets selecting BYU Zach Wilson with the second, while the San Francisco 49ers chose North Dakota State quarterback Trey Lance with the third pick. The Atlanta Falcons going tight end at 4, taking Florida's Kyle Pitts, while the Cincinnati Bengals chose LSU receiver Jamar Chase with the 5th. Matt Napolitano, Fox News.
And I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Do you dread waiting in those long, inconvenient lines? That's why you won't find them at Bank Pacific. We're back to our pre-COVID Monday to Saturday hours with all of our branches open. You know, that where others put branches, we place roots thing. And if you don't want to come to the bank, we have My Cloud Banking through which you can go to the bank on any of your devices, including through our new cool mobile banking platform with remote capture so you can deposit checks from anywhere. Offline, online, no line. Bank Pacific. Where others put branches, we place roots, and we're rooting for you. Member FDIC.
All dads should own a Traeger. And this Father's Day, you can win a Traeger smoker grill for your dad and feast on flavorful wood-fire crafted meals. Cooked with a flip of a switch. Cook low and slow or high and fast with digital precision on your Traeger pellet grill. Purchase $35 or more in fuel at 76 Circle K and enter to win. Gas up today and join Circle K's Father's Day package giveaway. A Traeger smoker grill, a canopy, a cooler full of meat, and 2 cases of Bud or Bud Light are up for grabs only at Circle K. Conditions apply. Visit 76CircleKGuam.com.
Mescla Chamorro Fusion Bistro in Tumon is back with all your Mescla favorites, like oxtail cadu, Kahlua pig and cabbage, and Chef Peter's style black stew frittata. Mescla is ready to welcome back everyone with great service in a safe and friendly environment. Come on down and visit Mescla Chamorro Fusion Bistro in Tumon, located on the first floor lobby of the Grand Plaza Hotel. Open for lunch from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. and for dinner from 5:30 p.m. to 9 p.m. Call 969-2652 for reservations. Mescla, a true taste of Guam.
I just can't get enough of those really great halftime shows that we have here, Jose. They get better every day, don't they?
Every day.
Every day.
Except Saturday and Sunday.
Yeah, Saturday and Sundays are tough. So here we are with Babauta versus Hattic. And this is not a boxing match or a wrestling match. This is more along the lines of a reverse quiz show. You can remember back in the day on TV when there were a lot of quiz shows on TV. The $64,000 question and
wrong answers only.
Yeah. So here we have a reverse quiz show where the contest is between Babauta and Hattic to see who can be the more clueless. So most recently, Jack has made a real name for himself over at the Chamorro Land Trust Commission. First of all, at a meeting of the Land Trust Commission, one of the land agents came forward and told the commissioners that Jack was trying to coerce her into making a recommendation that the commission take an illegal action by allowing people to swap in line. Jack straightened that out right away. He said, no, I didn't coerce her. I just took her report and added my own recommendation to it. Thought I could maybe slip this one by. If it worked, fine. If it didn't, at least I'll know better next time. That was basically what he said. Well, the commission adjourned, then they came back again, and John Regis Jr., the chairman, said, I'm going to do, and I almost said investigation. I better not say that. I'm going to look into this. I'm going to talk to all the land agents. And he did, and he came back and said, I talked to all the land agents, and we're all going to work together as a team, and everything's fine. And then at the next meeting, he came out and said, I've got to talk to the governor because Jack Haddock is not suitable for this job. And so then, but Jack is going to continue until we find a replacement. So Jack continued. John went and met the governor. The governor said, yeah, I met with John. We had a good meeting. What did you guys discuss? I can't talk about it. It's a personnel matter, of course, right? So we don't know what's in the Regis report. There are FOIAs out there looking for it, and I suspect somebody's going to get a hold of it sooner or later. So the next thing that happens is I guess it was Monday, right? This week. Headline in the story, Haddock moves to governor's office. So after screwing up royally at the Land Trust Commission, they give him perhaps a promotion at the governor's office. I suppose they're going to put him in charge of matters dealing with real estate, or perhaps Q's, Q-U-E-U-E, meaning line. So anytime that anybody has to line up for something, they'll send Jack over there to make sure the line functions properly. So Jack came out of this, Oh, and the land agent explained to the commissioners that first night, I know we can't do this. This is how we got in trouble last year. We can't allow people to swap places in line. And I would have to say this, that probably the street person out in front of the commission meeting that night may not have known about that rule. But he or they would have been one of the very few people on the island that didn't, because it's gotten so much coverage. So Jack comes along presenting himself as, well, I don't know if we could do it or not. So I thought we'd try it. If it worked, good. If not, well, we'll know better next time. Very, very clueless. So on a scale of 1 to 10, how clueless was Jack? Okay, that's Jack Haddock. And we have Tony Babauta, who really made a name for himself on the 19th floor. Yeah, so Tony was the governor's chief of staff. And during the time that quarantining was being done on the 19th floor, and Ricky, let's see, who was in charge up there? Becky Respicio and Alice Tyrone, 2 directors, were making sure that people got their meals, and all of the really what we would call tentago type work. But they were making big bucks for it and probably drawing COVID pay and overtime, etc. Well, Tony was up there just to check the operation out. He is, after all, the chief of staff. But then when he got there, he felt a little bit sick. Maybe it was altitude sickness up there in the 19th floor. So he decided he'd better go sleep in the presidential suite, which rents out for like $2,000 a night. So Tony did, but I guess the next morning he miraculously recovered, but a Karen somewhere blew the whistle on him. And I think 2 days later, Tony was out on the street. So that was quite an episode for a chief of staff. Now, that's what we all know. Now, what we're all speculating on goes much beyond that. What was he doing in that presidential suite? Was anyone else in the presidential suite? All of this speculation ran wild, right? And of course, we all know that high government officials should lead by example. So the latest that came out in PNC. Governor Lulian Guerrero's former chief of staff spoke out on the Hackabotan building affair. Now, you remember, and I'm going to get to this later, the Hackabotan building affair is where the public auditor debarred a government contractor because the government contractor broke the law by doing favors for the governor. When the governor had her great photo app over at the Hackabotan building, handing out checks to or getting Manamco signed up for the checks for the war claims. So that's what we're referring to when we talk about the Hackabotan affair. Former Chief of Staff Tony Babauta told News Talk 57's Patty Arroyo that he has yet to read the Office of Public Accountability's report on the matter. Well, you'd think he's got plenty of time. I don't think he's got a job. However, he said that at that time, he didn't see anything wrong. The OPA has barred local vendor S&H Enterprises, Inc. from entering into any GovGuam contracts for a year. That's because the OPA found it in violation of procurement laws when it allowed GovGuam to use the Hackabotan building to open the War Claims Office in January of last year. At the time, S&H Enterprises was also performing a $3.7 million contract with GovGuam and was awarded a $5.9 million contract 3 weeks later. How convenient. S&H Enterprises owns the Hackabotan building and allowed GovGuam to use it free of charge. And I read yesterday that the government provided substantial improvements to that building in the process of using it. The OPA determined that made use of the building a gift. Vendors are prohibited from giving gifts to any GovGuam at any time, any point in the procurement process. Babauta said that although everyone involved had good intentions, well, end of story, that's it, he admits things could have been handled better. I got a feeling the folks over in S&H feel the same way. Now, of course, we don't know, did Mr. S&H call the governor's office and somehow manage to get someone to answer the phone and say, I want to make the governor an offer she can't refuse? Is that what happened? Or did the governor tell Tony, call up Mr. S&H and see if we could use that empty Hackabotan building for the war claims? Babauta said that although everyone involved had good intentions, he admits things could have been handled better. It didn't resonate with me. It didn't jump out as a blip that we should have looked at more carefully. I think at that point it was after the fact. It was after the fact. What was after the fact, Tony? That doesn't make sense, does it? Unless he's saying that he didn't know about it when it was entered into. And then he says he was the chief of staff. I'm not saying that there's not blame that should go around on this. There obviously is. And a little more due diligence probably would have been better in the process. So is Tony trying to shed that blame on somebody else?
It sounds like it's Babauta versus AG.
Well, or maybe Babauta versus in-house counsel.
Oh.
Remember, there were two lawyers in-house at the time.
That's right.
I think one of them was the governor's son-in-law, and the other one was Sophia Diaz.
He's imitating Schultz.
Yeah, so let's go through this carefully again. It didn't resonate with me. It didn't jump out as a blip, that we should look more carefully. I think at that point it was after the fact, meaning he only found out about it after it had begun. I'm not saying there's not blame to go around on this, parenthesis, just don't point it at me, close parenthesis. I'm not saying there's not blame to go around on this. There obviously is. And a little more due diligence probably would have been better in the process. Now, when you mention the words due diligence, what are the first words that pop into your head? Another, Jose. Accountants and lawyers. Accountants are supposed to use due diligence when they audit books. Lawyers are supposed to use due diligence when they're counseling a client, right? So is he saying that if the lawyer, the lawyers are supposed to know about this stuff, that you can't give gifts? There is a procedure where a gift can be given to the government, but there's a procedure that has to be gone through, and the governor has to accept. And of course, the governor is going to go to council before she accepts. But you can't give gifts to the government if you are involved in government procurement. If I wanted to go down and say, Governor, I've got an extra unit at Paris Acres that I'd really like to give to you for such use as you would like to put it, I can do it because I'm not contracting with the government. But if I were contracting with the government, I can't do it. It's just against the law. Okay. So he says a little more due diligence probably would have been better in the process. What I've shared with you at the time a year ago, whatever it was, there seemed to be not only that particular company, but others were coming to the call and trying to help the government out and standing this thing up and kind of getting through the process of awarding claims to the survivors, Babauta said. Very
Sounds like the
interesting.
Sunshine Act moment. I'd like to know who those other places were.
Really? Yeah, and I'd like to know who those things were directed to. Of course, Babauta now, it could be read this way, Babauta saying, well, it wasn't me, it was somebody else, and I'm out of there now, so if you want to find somebody, go find these other folks that didn't use due diligence. Yeah. So if that's the reading, then I think Hattick takes the prize, because Babauta is more devious than Hattick. So Hattick is the more clueless of the two. So let me see what I can give. I can give Hattick on this one here. Instead of the coveted blue star, John Hattick gets the C for cluelessness.
Small crowd applause.
Yeah. Now, of course, the story isn't over yet. Given the fact that Babauta is out of the job and the Land Trust Commission needs an administrator. Do you see how this is all starting to fit together here? Maybe this was all planned in advance. Maybe Lou is saying, gosh, I got to do something for Tony Babauta. You know, we dropped him pretty hard after he fell out of the 19th floor. Yeah, so maybe we ought to do something. I know what we'll do. We'll take Jack Hattick out of the Land Trust Commission, and we'll find something for him here in the governor's office. And then there'll be a vacancy at the Land Trust Commission. Now the commission hires its own administrator, but I just had a talk with John Regis Jr. the other day, and I'm going to whisper in his ear and tell him, you know, Tony Babauta has been chief of staff. He would make a dynamite administrator for the Chamorro Land Trust Commission. What do you think, John? Governor, my arm hurts. Can you not twist it quite so hard? Oh, I'm sorry, John. Yeah. So, yeah, it kind of all fits together if you look at it through my jaundiced eye, right, Jose?
And then Monday comes. We're going to go, what did you say, Bob, on Friday?
Yeah. And when I'm reading the newspaper, the headline newspaper, Babauta assumes role at CLTC, right? Okay, let's break for the seventh inning stretch.
At GTA, we understand the importance of cybersecurity for your business's digital property. Our multi-threat security bundle provides managed security with professional services aimed to detect and stop malware and internet threats. Let our business solutions experts help your company build resilience with our cost-effective solutions. Safeguard your business today. Call 671-644-1000 or visit gta.net/business. GTA, we start with you.
Hafade, this is Congressman Nicholas. If you are a small business, you may be interested in a federal program called the State Small Business Credit Initiative. This program can provide federal funds to match equity investments into your company or help you get lower interest rates at local banks. To find out more on how this program can help your small business, please contact your Guam Congressional Office at 475-6453 or at michael.sanicolas@mail.house.gov.
This ad was paid for with official funds from the Office of Congressman Michael F.Q. San Nicolas.
There we are, Wrigley Field in Chicago for the 7th inning stretch. Everybody stand up and stretch out there in tailgater land. That means we only got 2 more innings of Tall Tales to go, and the next item on the card here is the AG versus BJ. And the AG, rather than defend his position, becomes snotty. Yeah. The Office of Attorney General said its legal arguments were judged incorrectly in a recent decision barring a vendor from bidding on public contracts for a year for donating office space to the governor's office. In the decision, Public Auditor Benjamin Cruz stated a company that was awarded a contract to provide meal services for the elderly violated ethical standards by allowing the government of Guam to use the Hakabotan building in Tamuning temporarily as a war claims processing center. Cruz wrote the donation was sandwiched. I really like that word. Excuse me, I mispronounced it. Sandwiched. The donation was sandwiched between a period when the company in question, S&H Enterprises, was awarded the elderly meal service contract and when it bid for a similar contract with the Department of Corrections. Active vendors are not allowed to give gifts to the government, Cruz stated in his decision. Offering favors is a breach of ethical standards, he said. The General Services Agency awarded the Senior Citizens Meals contract to S&H Enterprises on or around November 8, 2019 for $3.7 million. The War Claims Processing Center at Hakabotan began receiving claims on January 24, 2020. 3 weeks later, on February 17, the General Services Agency recommended the award of a $5.9 million contract to S&H Enterprises for meal services for DOC inmates and detainees, according to the public auditor. The Attorney General does not see how giving the governor's administration favors undermines the integrity of the procurement law and is a red flag, Cruz wrote in part of the OAG's involvement in the case. The AG's office, I think it's probably the Attorney General, not his office, not Katlina Chatrus, continues to assert the public auditor does not have the authority to ban vendors from government bids. Quote, the Office of the Public Auditor's comment completely mischaracterized the arguments made on behalf of the Office of the Attorney General's client, General Services Agency. So apparently the Attorney General represented GSA in the appeal from the decision of Claudia Akfaji to the public auditor. So the Attorney General represented wrongdoer here, the General Service Agency, and now they're saying, well, I guess BJ didn't understand my argument. Contrary to the public auditor's opinion, the OAG is undoubtedly concerned with protecting the integrity of the procurement process, which includes the process for appeals and debarment based on allegations of ethical violations. Crew's decision followed the government chief procurement officer's previous decision. The chief procurement officer denied a petition from a competing bidder to debar or suspend S&H Enterprises. The lawful process, according to the AG's office, was the administrative ruling from the chief procurement officer. Whether the OAG and public auditor agree or not, the law does not place this authority with the public auditor. His role is limited to reviewing the decision. In this case, there was neither a petition to debar, a decision to debar, nor appeal of a decision to debar, the Attorney General stated. Well, that isn't how the news story reads, and that isn't how the public auditor's website reads either. Now, here's where the AG gets snotty. However, accepting the argument that the OPA has the broad authority to resolve any actions involving the integrity of the procurement process, we welcome him to exercise that in the future cases involving procurement violations instead of forwarding the cases to the OAG for review. Now, is that snotty or is that snotty? Accepting the argument that the OPA has broad authority to resolve any actions involving the integrity of the process, we welcome him to exercise that authority in future cases. Now, I would think more of the Attorney General if he had a good legal argument to counter the position that BJ took, that he's reduced to one paragraph that he could tell to the reporter for the Post, instead of engaging in this, I'm rubber, you're glue, I'm whatever you say bounces off me and sticks to you. That's kind of what he's doing here. So not a very good performance on the part of the public auditor. And then we go on to S&H Enterprises confirmed to the Post that the company will appeal the public auditor's decision. S&H respectfully disagrees with the decision and will be exercising its right of appeal of this decision as they believe it is inconsistent with the law and prior decisions of the public auditor. The business told the Post in a release statement, as lowest responsible bidder, S&H takes its ethical duties and responsibilities very seriously and looks forward to having this matter resolved on appeal. Part of Cruz's justification for the ban was based on statements made by S&H during the course of OPA's inquiry. He wrote his review indicated the department may be appropriate to protect the public interest in a procurement system that is free from favor giving. Furthermore, the department is supported by SH's own testimony that it would grant another favor if the opportunity presented itself. On to the appeal. In a trial brief submitted to the OPA in January, S&H Enterprises attorney Vanessa L. Williams, so maybe it was her and not the Attorney General, but of course we know Vanessa Williams pretty well, right? Obviously she had a lot of other things on her mind, had to make some decisions as to what she was going to do. She argued that the public auditor was not authorized to debar or suspend the business. No legislative authority has been confirmed on the public auditor to conduct debarment or suspension proceedings. Now, I went through the law here pretty quickly, and BJ hung his hat on the fact that there is something called the Procurement Policy Office that's supposed to have a role here, but there is no one on the Procurement Public Policy Office. and S&H didn't offer any estimate that it functions. And also the statute said that when BJ reviews matters that are appeals from the procurement officer and others, he reviews them de novo. Law and Order notebooks, Jose. So there are different kinds of appeals. There are appeals on the record, in other words, where a record was created in the tribunal or court below, and that's all that the reviewing court looks at, including the conclusions and decisions made below. And then there's the de novo appeal. If you you are sued in small claims court and you lose, you can have it appealed de novo to the Superior Court. In other words, the Superior Court starts all over from scratch, and the person who sued you has to prove his case again. So BJ points out that the statute says that he reviews these matters de novo, and he has other good arguments. It's complicated. It's not quite as complicated as the Guam case before the Supreme Court, but it is complicated. I've read through it. I'm on BJ's side. Of course, I'd be on BJ's side anyhow because I want to see a clean procurement process. And I don't like an attorney general who substitutes snottiness for scholarship. Okay, so where are we here? We're done with the seventh inning stretch. It's not time to go to Churchill Downs, but I got Greg on the line. He wants to know about government agencies and their attorneys. Go for it, Greg.
Hey, Bob, how are you today?
Doing great.
Hey, I just got a question. So the OAG is representing GSA, but how many other GovGuam agencies have their own attorneys that we're paying for?
Well, we're paying for them all, whether it's the Attorney General or private counsel. All of the agencies have counsel in one form or another. If they don't have private counsel, then the Attorney General represents them.
Why?
That's what the statute requires, that the Attorney General is basically general counsel for the government of Guam.
So then why do government of Guam agencies have private counsel?
I can give you the arguments, and I might even give you my own conclusion. Some of the arguments are that there are agencies that require specialized counsel that aren't available at the Attorney General's office. Places like the airport, the hospital, etc. So they make the argument that they require specialized knowledge, and therefore they need to be able to hire from amongst the private bar. Rev tax, in my mind, is a classic example of an agency that requires specialized counsel, because tax law is something that the average lawyer knows enough about tax law to recognize a tax problem when he sees one and to call in a tax attorney. So in the 28th Guam legislature, I got a law passed that created an office of principal tax attorney at the Department of Rev Tax, which they never filled. But anyhow, that's one of the arguments. Now, if you're a cynical kind of guy, Greg, and I don't think you're... Are you cynical, Greg?
No, I just question things.
Okay, well, all right. Now, the other argument is this, that lawyers have deep pockets, they have a lot of money, they're generous, they make generous contributions to political campaigns, and when their Godzu wins, lo and behold, those lawyers that make the generous contributions wind up with cushy government contracts to provide legal services. So I suspect the truth lies somewhere in between.
All right. Hey, thanks, Bob. I appreciate your input.
Okay, Greg. Good talking to you. Okay. Let's see. I got a little traffic here in the green room right now. We've got Tony and we've got Drive-Through Jack. I'm going to take Tony first. No disrespect to you, Drive-Through Jack, but I always feel better about Drive-Through Jack after I've been to Churchill Downs. And you've had so much airtime here. Maybe it's time to put for a little equity, right, Jose? A little equity. So I'm going to call on...
You're a little more woke, Bob.
There you go. Good afternoon, Tony.
Good afternoon, Bob. I have a simple question. So are businesses allowed to give anything to the government outside of procurement?
Yes.
What I mean by that is like donation or treat everyone to pizza or something of that sort?
Well, government, companies, corporations, whatever kind of company, whatever legal form, can make donations to the government. I think I mentioned a little bit earlier that correspondence with the governor herself is required. There's a procedure that must be gone through, and the governor has to accept the gift. And if that's the case, yeah, it can be done. But it can't be done by any company that is engaged in procurement. And BJ will tell you that companies that are bidding on government contracts have to certify that they haven't given any favors to the government since the thing started. So it can be done. Now, giving pizzas to government employees, I suspect that there's probably no way to do that. And here's another wrinkle. It's against the law to reward a government employee for doing his duty. If someone is supposed to engage in marriage ceremonies, you know, now we elect commissioners and senators, etc., perform marriage ceremonies. They're not supposed to accept a gratuity from the people who did the marriage. I think there's a provision that allows mayors to do it, but other than that, no. If you get married by a judge, you can't say to the judge, you know, I really appreciate it, Judge. Here's $20. Go out and have yourself lunch.
Okay. All right. Thanks. That was it. Thank you for your wisdom.
Okay, good talking to you, Tony. All right, next we got Drive-Through Jack, and then we've got our Fred. Well, we've got a murderer's row here. We've got Drive-Through Jack batting third, and our Fred is the cleanup hitter here, right? Good afternoon, our Drive-Through Jack.
Hey, good afternoon there, Bob. How are you doing today?
Well, I'm not sitting in a drive-through, so I'm getting kind of hungry. I bet you're a lot better shape than I am.
I am. I'm heading towards McDonald's for my regular Friday fish switch. But, you know, I called because what really I find puzzling is how quick a turnaround for this Habahokan deal, while the issue with the little red Jeep and the big bad chief of police is still sitting there on the, you know, on the district attorney's desk. I'm kind of puzzled with that.
Well, the decision by the public auditor, I think that appeal was filed like in January, so it hasn't moved. It's moved as it should, but it hasn't moved rather rapidly. And then, of course, the public auditor is not involved with Jeepgate. We've been told that the Attorney General now has the investigation of Jeepgate on his lap. So is that what you're referring to? He was so quick to snap back at BJ, but so slow to comment on Jeepgate?
Yeah, because, you know, even Moses himself took a shorter time coming down with the second copy of tablets and what the Attorney General is doing on the issue of whether there's corruption down there at our law enforcement. So, you know, that's a major concern for me. I don't know if it is for anybody else.
Me too, Jack.
I was just wondering what the turnaround period is. And
hey, Jack,
I
misspoke. I said Jeepgate. I meant Jeep Throat. Sorry about that. Jeep Throat.
Yeah. So, you know, I'm hoping that you know, whatever the Attorney General's doing with with a case, comes to light pretty soon. And we're just waiting on it. And, either exonerate our police or, put them on the watch, one of the two. But, this lingering, whether, the paper had to be corrected by Jack Haddock, we don't know. Whether he had to add a few lines in there. Or maybe they spelled imprudent wrong. I don't know. But I was hoping that,
Maybe they got his name wrong. Maybe they only called him Jack Haddock II.
But I was hoping that it'll come down, and we're waiting here. Maybe
Well, here's what I might do then, Jack. Maybe I'll call BJ, and I'll say, BJ, come out with an opinion on Jeep Throat, saying that the police officers involved were not involved and there was no cover-up. This will certainly cause the Attorney General to come out and say, you're misunderstanding my investigation. There were people at fault.
Yeah. And then a second thing is the other day we discussed about the hiring of police officers or recruiting thereof from other jurisdictions, and you mentioned that they may have to go to the academy again. And about the national search for a police chief, if that's involved, and you clearly identified no, it's an at-will employment by the governor. So I was wondering, are those two things you might be looking into, or you might be dabbling into or thinking about when it comes to this national thing of police reform, that maybe we should have standards here? I mean, we have the problem. We don't have the problem with doctors and nurses having to be recertified to come here. I know when it comes to lawyers, they have to get what is it, a clearance from the bar to participate here.
No, Jack. If you want to practice lawyer, you have to take the exam and you have to be admitted to the bar. There is an exception for government attorneys who can work for the government for 5 years without taking the bar, but private practice, you got to take the bar.
Don't they have some sort of thing if they can represent a client here from another jurisdiction? Don't they?
It's called pro hac vice, but that would be just for one case.
Well, So I was wondering, maybe even for our recruiting for our law enforcement. I mean, I know the bullets don't fly here faster, or maybe they do. Maybe that's why. I know maybe probably imprudent driving is defined differently in other places. Maybe, I don't know. But I was just wondering, and you said about, not cross-training, but lateral movements. And I was also wondering about these hiring on Gov Guam, whether it be the executive or the agencies. I mean, why is it that private businesses, especially when we see this pandemic and unemployment insurance and stuff like that that's coming down, and these rules and guidelines, why is it that private businesses are encouraged or even forced to put their things on hire.guam, but the governor's office, the executive branch, and local governments or agencies such as the port don't put up their advertisements, and then later on we find out people get hired over here as staff assistants, as accountants with
the notice requirements aren't as good as they could be because the lieutenant governor didn't find out that his son-in-law, his brother-in-law was applying for a government job until after he'd been interviewed. So that's really a shortfall there, right?
Yeah, but also, even for
it's not a yabba, Jack. It's not a yabba. Duck, Jack, duck. It might hit you right in the head.
And there's there's so many positions that came up that people were getting hired. None of these positions showed up on hire.guam. And so, people are left here. People are asking. People that have to jump through the hoops to put in resumes.
It's a good point, Jack. We do need to make sure we do need to start talking about that. I'm going to respond to both of your points. As far as the police department is concerned, we have a post. What does it stand for? police officer standards and training, and they're supposed to be a regulatory body that comes up with these things, and it hasn't worked worth a darn. And whether or not the police department would hire laterally from off-island departments, or whether or not the police department wants to advertise, whether or not the police department should put officers from other jurisdictions on the force without going through the police officer boot camp. These are all things that are crying out for leadership from guess who? From the chief of police. And he has not said anything about this. He hasn't really said anything about anything except his motorcycle, unless somebody asked him about it, right? So it's another failure on his part. As far as hire.com, that's a really good, that's certainly a good idea, Jack, and I'm surprised the government isn't doing it, and the government should do it. So I'm going to enlist you to use your gigantic power as a lobbyist amongst the drive-through gang to start championing that legislation.
I'm sorry, Bob. That lobbyist doesn't leave a good taste in my mouth. I mean, that's.
Well, you're on your way to the drive. You're on your way to the drive-through. That'll fix it. Good talking to you, Jack. That's our drive-through Jack for today. Okay, let's go to Churchill Downs, and I think I can find Fred up in the stands at Churchill Downs waiting for the Kentucky Derby.
Listen to The Point. Any speaker, anytime. Check us out on your FM radio at 93.3, 104.3 HD3, thepoint.gu, Facebook Live, YouTube Live, and tune in. And announcing radio.com. Download the app and hear The Point. Get the latest news, sports, entertainment, and more. On demand. Your phone is digital. Your life is digital. And we are too. 93.3, The Point.
76 Circle K, the Subaki Tower, and Spa Ayalam bring you another staycation. We are celebrating Mom and all she does. Win a 2-night stay at the luxurious Subaki Tower, get pampered by Spa Ayalam, and enjoy a delicious lunch and dinner at Casa Oceano. All you have to do is purchase $35 or more in 76 fuel and enter to win a staycation fit for a mom. The more you gas, the more chances of winning. Visit 76circlekguam.com or any Circle K location for more information.
So here we are, Churchill Downs, to Kentucky Derby a week from tomorrow. We won't be there because they always do the Run for the Roses on Saturday. I suspect if they understood that we go to Churchill Downs every day here on Tall Tales, they might want to move it back to Friday, but we'll wait and see. Wandering around in the stands at Churchill Downs, I run into none other than our Fred. Hello, how you doing, our Fred?
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is your captain speaking. We are slowly into our descent into what used to be called Guam, now currently called the government of Guam, due to a lack of a private sector. Enjoy your stay, 85 degrees with a chance of rain. Please fly with us again. Bob, we're going to turn into a government of Guam pretty soon.
Yeah, you're right, Fred.
Our tourists will be landing into a private-less sector called Government of Guam. That's it.
Well, you know, ordinarily in what we would think of as a democratic society or a representative republic, we think that the people basically governs, tells the government what to do. But we are changing that. We're living in a society where the government tells the people what to do.
Yeah, and it's really hurting the private sector, and I think they need to really not take it for granted. It's going to just turn into a big one, like look at the homes can only be afforded by government employees, not your regular person, hourly wage or even regular worker. I mean, our market's turning into government of Guam. I don't think that's what we want. They really need to look at that. It's not a business-friendly place anymore. Too much regulations. And I want to bring up the SH Corp contract with GovGuam. And I was talking to Jose about it earlier, that entering into a contract, the government is equally at fault, knowing the laws and getting this free Hakubotan building space usage. I think the AG should bar government of Guam from entering into contracts or for 1 year. Don't penalize SH Corp. They probably just said, hey, go ahead and use it, and pretty much that was it. And Gov Guam should have known, hey, no, we can't accept this. We have to pay. Please advise how much is the cost for the usage. So don't penalize SH Corp for this. I think both parties, if anything, both parties should be penalized.
Well, I'll see your both parties, but I don't see your don't penalize S&H, because when you go into a government procurement, you got to know what the rules are. Otherwise, don't do it. Now, Fred, as far as the government is concerned, barring the government from ever entering into another contract doesn't hurt the government. It just hurts the citizens, because the government has to contract for things that people need. So the enforcement on that end should lie against the employee or officer or employee who screwed up. You heard me talking about Tony Babauta. If you're the chief of staff, not knowing that you're violating the law isn't much of a defense any more than it is for Jack Haddock. So I would have hoped the Attorney General, instead of being snotty, would have gone back and looked at that whole transaction and said, did anybody break the criminal law here? And that would be the best that we could do.
Yeah, or the AG can say, okay, any contract the government of Guam enters into must go through the AG's office or certain protocols.
Already,
Okay.
yeah.
But don't. I think barring SNH Corp, I think it's all one-sided. It shouldn't be like that, because GovGuam knows the laws and should also take responsibility on it.
Well, Fred, you got to stop and remember what government procurement is all about. When a business buys something, what a business is looking for is the best product at the lowest price. When the government buys something, that's not what the government's looking for. The government's major emphasis is to make sure that everybody has a chance to do business with the government.
Yeah.
So when one company visibly does a favor for the government and then is awarded a contract, even if everything were illegitimate, which it wouldn't have been, the other people in that same business are going to say, I guess in order to get a government contract, I got to do favors for the government. That just isn't the way things ought to be done. So if you don't put the burden on the bidder, then you're not going to have a legitimate procurement system, because you're encouraging companies to do the same thing that S&H did, probably hoping that it could get away with it.
Yeah. Okay, so that, and then the other point is on this whole quarantine and all. When you or me or anyone flies from Guam into LAX or Seattle or San Francisco or anywhere in the continental U.S., we are not treated as foreigners. We are one country. Guam and the U.S. mainland are one country. We're U.S. citizens, even though there's a body of water in between. But when you enter the U.S., you walk freely and go get your rent-a-car or your shuttle bus or whatever it is. But when you return here, you're treated as a foreigner and have to quarantine. I think that's a very one-sided way of doing things. We are treated as U.S. citizens when we land in LAX.
I agree, Fred, but I'm going to have to say goodbye. I want to see if I can squeeze in Pete before the end of the show, okay?
Sure.
Thanks,
My point.
Fred.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, repeat. Can you repeat that?
Oh, it looks like...
How are you doing?
Yeah, there you go.
How you doing?
I'm doing great, Pete.
Hey, yeah, so they really should punish S&H and force GovGuam to pay for whatever rent they gave for free, because that's the remedy. Is if you had a gift, you either return the gift or you pay fair market value for the gift. So they really should punish SNH and make GovGuam pay them.
Okay, it makes there's a certain symmetry to that, Pete. I think that it should cost somebody something. But once again, if that were the case, then SNH walks away kind of winners, doesn't it?
Yeah, what I'm saying is it's kind of ludicrous, the whole thing. You know, if to say if someone donates something for a good cause, then they cannot. Then they're banned from being, doing business. So if I donate 1,000 cases of water to GovGuam for some event, then now I can't contract with GovGuam. It's kind of ridiculous.
Gotta go, Pete. Good talking to you.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
A heavy tragedy. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. That's what Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is calling the deaths of nearly 4 dozen people trampled in a stampede at a religious festival in northern Israel, normally attended by ultra-Orthodox Jews. Many chanting and praying near the scene. Another 150 people reported injured. What isn't known yet is what triggered that stampede. President Biden marking his 100th day in office yesterday with a drive-in rally in Georgia, pushing his infrastructure program.
There's no reason American workers can't lead the world in the production of electric vehicles and the batteries that propel them. We can do what we need to do in saving the planet and yet create millions of good-paying jobs.
Planning to pay for the estimated $2 trillion in spending on infrastructure, the president said it's about time the wealthy and corporations started paying what he called their fair share. South Carolina Senator Tim Scott under attack from some for saying the GOP response to the president that America is not a racist country. Repeatedly called Uncle Tim by his critics on Tuesday.
It's really saddening to see that what the left is doing is fighting bigotry with bigotry, and they've exposed their hypocrisy and their true motivation. Has nothing to do with ending prejudice. It has everything to do with claiming or getting more power.
And Senator Scott telling Fox's Hannity he finds it despicable. Former New York Mayor Rudy Giuliani firing back over the raid on his home and office earlier in the week, saying the search warrant used to seize electronics was illegal. Telling Fox's Tucker Carlson tonight the Justice Department has a double standard.
I said, well, don't you want these? And they said, what are they? I said, those are Hunter Biden's hard drives. And they said, no.
Giuliani has been